So prior to coming awake, I struggled with a question in history. And the question was this: why have there been so many undeclared wars in the United States? Now, the last so-called declared war was World War II from 1941 to 1945. Now, this is author, lecturer Howard Zinn, and Howard Zinn is going to take on that question, but I'm going to add some commentary with it. Now, let me just say as a preface, I'm not sure if Howard Zinn is controlled opposition or not. I haven't done any research on him, but the general axiom is it's always controlled opposition. So even if this individual is controlled opposition, the question has interested me for a long time. And I've never really heard anybody even try to take on the question. So at least he takes it on. Let's listen in to Howard Zinn in his lecture series, Bringing Democracy Alive.
A bill passed eliminating habeas corpus and creating the possibility that anybody in the United States, anybody, citizen, non-citizen, anybody can be picked up and designated by somebody who has been designated by either Bush or Rumsfeld, designated as an unlawful enemy combatant. And there'll be no recourse and no questions to be asked, no trials, no evidence, no due process, picked up and put away and not heard from again.
Okay, I think he's referring to this called the Patriot Act, which is really wonderful. Sounds really wonderful, Patriot Act, but basically what he's saying is anybody, for any reason, with absolutely no evidence whatsoever, can be picked up, detained, and imprisoned.
That's the legal situation right now as a result of the passage of the Military Commissions Act of 2006. That's enough reason for impeachment. I mean, it could have been could have had a more drastic basis. Wars of aggression. The Nuremberg trials led to the Nuremberg principles and
okay, the Nuremberg trials are fake. So that leads me to believe that the man you're looking at, Howard Zinn, is nothing but controlled opposition. Nuremberg trials were drama meant for newsreels and radio and script. Why? Because war is a hoax.
Which the United States was a signatory to, and for which the Nazi leaders were put on trial and hanged for wars of aggression.
Okay, as Dave would say, nobody died, nobody got hurt in the Nuremberg trials.
The United States government has engaged in a war of aggression against Iraq. I'm not suggesting drastic penalties. A mild, humane, nonviolent, even constitutional penalty, impeachment, and no jail time. Maybe community service.
Okay, so anytime you've got like a very serious subject like that and then you've got laughs, it does lead you to the conclusion that it's all staged, because the speaker becomes a comedian and the audience, which is hearing a very serious subject, shouldn't be laughing. If anything, if wars are absolutely real, R-E-A-L, everyone should be weeping, not laughing.
George Bush, a year working at a homeless shelter to just show him that there are people in the United States who don't live on ranches. And we'd have maybe Cheney at the same center to tell Bush what to do. Anyway, I thought I'd start off on a mild note. But I will talk about bringing democracy alive. I guess it'll be a theme throughout whatever I say. I want to read to you something that I came across. We always claim we came across. We don't say we looked hard for something. I just happened to come across this statement by Hermann Goering, one of my favorite writers and speakers. It comes out of actually a book called Nuremberg Diary.
Okay, once again, the Nuremberg trials are fake, and Hermann Goering is fake. Now, in one of the videos I did on one of my channels, I identified Hermann Goering as Orson Welles. Now, one of the channels that comes out of Germany also attempts to identify Hermann Goering, and perhaps the analysis that is done on that channel is better than mine, and that is correct and I'm false. Or perhaps that different actors play the same character. In other words, several people play Hermann Goering. Now, it's not impossible because of makeup and prosthetics and costuming and everything, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to give you the reference to that channel, and I actually did a plug for this channel under my Spotlight On series, and also on my playlist on this channel, War Backwards Equals Raw. You can find this channel listed. Now, this particular video you'll have to go to this channel to find, and I'm going to give you the channel here. Okay, on that channel, the host of the channel, the creator of the channel, does an excellent job of identifying Hermann Goering with the actor-based reality as it would have come out of Germany. So perhaps that is far better than my analysis, which I pin Hermann Goering as Orson Welles. But let's continue on here.
Was written by a man who was a psychologist who at the time of the Nuremberg trials was given the job of interviewing the top Nazi leaders who were in prison. And he took notes from these interviews. And he interviewed Hermann Goering and took notes. And I don't know whether the interpreter spoke German and English. I don't know if Goering spoke to him in English. Goering spoke good English. He was a well-educated man, as many Nazi leaders were.
Now that might be put a plug in for my interpretation was Orson Welles. However, if he spoke good German, it could put a plug in for the interpretation or the identification on the channel I just showed you. So there may have been an English Hermann Goering speaking, and there may be a German speaking Hermann Goering. I don't know. But what I know is this. It's actor-based, no matter what. War, politics, and even big-time religion.
Well, in the kind of spirit of education, let's say, of the Leave No Child Behind Act. You see, that is, they pass the tests. They get high test scores. And, but he asked Goering, how come you were able to bring the German people into this obviously horrible situation, this war which led to millions of them dying and utter defeat? And according to his notes, this is what Goering...
Okay, once again, echoing Dave J., nobody died, nobody got hurt. Basically the way they say so. Now, in any so-called war, there will be accidents, there will be natural deaths. There might even be some form of people getting murdered because they know the whole thing's fake. So, basically speaking, nobody died, nobody got hurt.
Said, why, of course the people don't want war. Why would some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war? But after all, it's the leaders of the country who determine the policy. The people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any country. It was that last sentence that interested me. It works the same way in any country. You mean it works the same way in a totalitarian state as in our democratic, liberal state? And what does that then tell us about democracy? And what does that then tell us about the state of democracy in our country, if that's the way it works? Well, in fact, when you really inspect the state of democracy in the United States, it turns out there is no very simple spectrum of totalitarianism on the one end and democracy on the other end. There are all sorts of gradations in between. And democracy in the United States is not at the far end of the democratic spectrum. We have a long way to go, really, to be a democracy. We always have. We don't like to say it because it's too easy to just say we're a democracy. And there are just two kinds of...
Okay, just a little play on words. Remember, words have denotative meaning and connotative meaning. So, when he says democracy, it can connote or cause feelings inside of you, meaning freedom, and we have choice, and we have a vote. But what you don't realize is this, that the literal meaning of the term democracy is just simply rule by people. It comes from two words, demos and arche. Arche, rule, demos, people, rule by people. So a democracy is just simply people ruling. Now, who are these people? You say, so the word democracy connotates or stirs up feelings inside of people of, oh, we're free, we have votes, our nation is a democracy. Well, actually, that's incorrect too, because it's supposed to be a republic, not a democracy. But anyhow, plays on words, people not understanding the true meaning of words and their definitions, their origins. Hence, it becomes a mishmash. And this one, who's called Howard Zinn, is pretty good at guiding people through and coming across as opposition.
Places, countries in the world, they're totalitarian states and they're democracies, but it isn't that way at all. I mean, we go to junior high school and we learn about what democracy is. We live in a democracy. How do we know? Well, we have a constitution. We have three branches of government. I remember them putting those figures, those drawings on the board. Then we have checks and balances, and they have the arrows going back and forth, executive, legislative, judicial. It was entrancing.
Now notice the play on words. It was entrancing, meaning you've come under the spell of the false system of three branches. Branches of what? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
And checks and balances. Who can forget that? And if one branch of the government does something bad, it will be checked by another branch. It means nothing can go wrong. Well, because then you grow up and you get out in the world and maybe you study a little and you look around and you find, no, checks and balances doesn't really work. And certainly not in foreign policy, and certainly not in going to war. There are no checks and balances on the president in going to war. The president decides on war, and then Congress, like a whole flock of sheep, goes along. I mean, you can trace this back to every war. Go to the Mexican War.
Okay, so basically when he talks about the president going to war, that would be a reference to what's called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution in 1964, that supposedly the U.S. Navy was attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin, and we had to retaliate, so a bill was passed quickly to give the president full power to just go ahead and proceed with war. By the way, the one who was behind a lot of that hoaxing was Admiral Morrison, Jimmy Morrison's father. Jimmy Morrison's father of the Doors. Jimmy Morrison, who will supposedly mysteriously die. But Jimmy Morrison reappears as none other than Rush Limbaugh. Well, I'm getting sidetracked here. As you can see, I enjoy making these videos.
1846, and see how much debate there was in Congress on going into the Mexican War. 1 hour of debate on going into the Mexican War. You can follow this all the way through. The Congress has never been a check on the president's willingness to go to war, which is really a complete violation of the idea that James Madison had when it was originally written in the Constitution that Congress was given the power to declare war. And Madison said the reason this is so because the president is the kind of office which is disposed to war. No checks and balances there, and no checks and balances from the Supreme Court. You would think, well, and we learned this, Supreme Court decides what is constitutional and what is not. That's comforting. Until you look at the record. And then you see that the Supreme Court will never stand in the way of an unconstitutional war.
So he's trying to tell you that even in their own system, it's phony. Baloney. Sorry, I had to get some water there. Got a dry throat. But the whole idea of checks and balances and Supreme Court interpreting the Constitution, he's telling you, when they want a war, it don't matter. It's coming no matter what.
Every war we have fought since World War II has been unconstitutional. No Congress has declared war in the way that the Constitution requires ever since the end of World War II. And has this...
Okay, now that's the question that haunted me for many years, and even before I was so-called awake. And he's going to tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to try to give you some of my thoughts and explanations for what is the correct answer to this question.
Supreme Court ever made any judgment on this? Well, it had an opportunity during the Vietnam War. it had an opportunity because 3 GIs refused to get on a plane to go to Vietnam. And they were arrested, of course, and they made their way to the Supreme Court. And their argument was, this war is unconstitutional. There was no congressional declaration as required by the Constitution. And maybe these 3 guys had gone to junior high school and learned that the Supreme Court's job is to determine what is constitutional and what is not. And what did the Supreme Court decide? The answer is, it didn't. It didn't take the case. You need 4 Supreme Court justices to even decide it.
So even according to our so-called recorded history of the United States, any war after the Second World War has been unconstitutional, meaning the Congress did not act and declare war. Now, why is that true? Well, he's saying, oh, they just ignore it and everything like that. Now, in a way, that's correct, but I'm going to suggest something else to you in answer to my question that's haunted me, and that would pertain to the Emergency Powers Act on, guess what? The third of 33. I want you to see that date, so I'm going to zero in on it. The third 3 of the 3rd month of 33. That is the 9th of March, 1933. Now, what happened on that? They just talk about it being the Emergency Banking Act, but it's more than that. Okay? It's much more than that. There's a reference to it, an actual reference. Okay, now there's much more to it, and I downloaded the document just to show you the whoops, wait a minute. Hold on, I'm sorry, I got the wrong thing for you there. There we are. Okay, just to show you that the declaration of emergency